owned them, and that was about the last thing the man ever did. And when that little dispute with the English ended, we kindly asked it back. They kindly refused, so most of our colonies were lost. The Dutch still have 3 islands in the Caribbean. They still belong to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They are called Bonaire, Saba and Saint Eustatius. Forget about those, it's not interesting. 3 volcanic rocks in the Caribbean, that's it. Other islands that you might thought to be Dutch, like Curaçao, St. Martin, the Dutch Antilles, they no longer belong to the Kingdom of the Netherlands. They got their independence. That was the history part, ladies and gentlemen. Canals. Canals in Amsterdam. We started to dig them from the 1400s onwards. And canals, ladies and gentlemen, have one function and one function only: drainage. We need them for the purpose of drainage. Later on they got a second function, and that is what we are doing now as well, which is transportation. But drainage really is the main purpose. Amsterdam counted in the 1700s roughly 130 miles of canals. We have now 90 miles left. The others were filled and drained because we needed road connections. But still having 90 miles of canals is the reason we are sometimes nicknamed the Venice of the North. Don't know if you have been to Venice, but if you have, you know that is utterly nonsense. Venice and Amsterdam have 2 things in common, and that's it. They both have canals, we both sink. Venice is sinking quick, we are sinking slow, but we do sink every century an inch. Which means that parts of the city are above, parts are below sea level. That is depending on where you are in the city. We currently going through the canals, we are below sea level. That is not surprising, ladies and gentlemen. 1/3 of the Netherlands are below sea level. And half of this country would disappear if we wouldn't have dikes or dunes to protect us. So floods do take place in this country. Not on a yearly basis, but they do take place. Biggest disaster flooding-wise that ever happened to this country in modern times was in 1953, where as a result of a storm tide, in total 67 dikes gave way and 1,835 people drowned. To prevent that from ever happening again, the Dutch are obliged to take swimming lessons at the age of 5. Doesn't matter. You can be Mark Phelps or Ian Thorpe. If a dike bursts, you're gonna drown. Sheer luck. That's the only thing that might save you. What happened to this country in '53 is the same thing that happened to New Orleans. So what we did to prevent that from happening again, if you take the city of New Orleans, in front of it, in the ocean, we constructed a huge wall. It's a storm surge barrier. But in the Netherlands, this wall contains locks, so we can open and close them. We're always open, otherwise it would damage the environment. But during a storm or a spring tide, we close the doors, and that's how that part is nowadays protected. Floods still take place in this country, ladies and gentlemen, but not sea-wise, river-wise. There are 2 major rivers that go through Europe, the Netherlands and the North Sea. One is the River Rhine from Switzerland, and the other one is the River Maas or Meuse from France. Because of these rivers, floods almost never really hit. Have a look at our houses, left or right, doesn't matter. You might notice that we, the Dutch, we don't like curtains. You can look into our living room. It's got to do with our religion. We are Protestants. The state religion in the Netherlands is the Protestant religion. And it was the fashion in the 1700s that if you were a good Protestant, that you should live a decent and a sober life. And in order to show others you were living that life, no curtains. If you see curtains, that family is Catholic. And although we are officially a Protestant country, most people are Catholic. 87% of the Dutch have the Catholic religion, 19% are Dutch Reformed. Still, the state religion is Dutch Reformed. Whatever you heard about this country, ladies and gentlemen, the opposite is more likely to be the truth. Any idea what the national colour of the Dutch is? Orange. Almost. It's blue. However, like you say, orange is not strange, because if Dutch athletes compete in a sports event, Olympic Games or something, we always dress up in orange. And the reason is to honor the royal family. Our royal family, they have 43 family names, but one of them is orange. And that's why Dutch athletes always dress up in orange. But blue is the national color. What, according to you, is typical Dutch? When you hear the name Holland or the Netherlands, what jumps to mind? Windmills, tulips, clocks. Anything else? Beer? Marijuana, yeah, that was a matter of time. And the red light district. You haven't mentioned a single Dutch thing. Wooden shoes. They come from Egypt. 2,000 years before the birth of Christ. They're not Dutch. Windmills and cheese originate from former Persia. 6,000 years before the birth of Christ. It's not Dutch. Marijuana comes from the Middle East. Prostitution is the oldest profession in the world. It's not Dutch. What else did we have? Tulips. Tulips are a mountain flower. We have one hill. It's 223.5 meters above sea level. It's not Dutch. So what is Dutch, ladies and gentlemen? Sausage. German. The wooden shoes. No, wooden shoes come from Egypt. Sorry, what was that? Dutch oven. Actually, that's English. We fought 3 naval wars against the English, and the English started giving us funny names, including the word Dutch. One of them is Dutch oven. A Dutch widow. Any ideas? Prostitute. Dutch defense. To surrender. The English gave us 80 names, including the word Dutch, just to make fun of us. By the way, we're not called Dutch, we're called Diets. Diets is the only proper name for the people in this country. Don't worry if you call us Dutch. Nobody's offended, but Diets is the only proper name. The Netherlands were the last country to invade England successfully. I do need to tell you that not a single shot was fired, otherwise we would have turned around. But this person from the Netherlands became King of England. He was called King William of Orange. When he became King of England, he was married to Mary Stuart. The English could not pronounce his name proper. They made it Dutch. That's where the name Dutch originates from. Right, have a quick look to the left. To the right, sorry. The fourth building from the corner, the black brick one. It's coming forward. It's tilting forward. So it's the one next to that green sun shutter that reads Johannes on it. Go to the top and just compare to the building standing next to it. It's about a foot coming forward.
Why?
Quite a few buildings do that in Amsterdam.
By the apprentice.
They tilt a little. They come a little bit forward, and they tilt a little bit to the side. Most of them are standing straight though. There's a huge difference between the three. When a building is tilting forward, like the one we just passed, there's nothing wrong with that. They were built on purpose tilting forward. When these buildings were built, we go back now to the 17th century. Brick was expensive. So very often a person could not afford it to have an insulation wall constructed. So the building only got one wall. Now we have in the Netherlands, although this is a strange day, but in the Netherlands we have average 130 rainy days.
Wow.
When it rains a few days in a row and you have only one wall, it will get humid on the inside. When your house is tilting slightly forward, it's easier for the water to fall off from the top. It doesn't necessarily run along the entire wall, keeping it wet. There's nothing wrong with a house that tilts forward. Like I said, most of them are standing straight. Either meant that the person who had the building built was rich enough to have this insulation wall constructed, then the house of course is standing straight. Or in the beginning of the 19th century, when brick became affordable, they constructed an insulation wall in front of the tilting one. Then the house is also standing straight. When the house tilts to the side, ladies and gentlemen, you've got a problem. That's not done on purpose. The place where we are, where Amsterdam is, this was a very stupid place to build a city. This is a swamp. So if we like to build a house, we have to give it a proper foundation. Now, we use concrete, but in the days that these were built, there was no knowledge of concrete. The Roman Empire, they used concrete. Colosseum in Rome, for example, or the Pantheon in Rome, concrete. But when the Roman Empire fell, the knowledge of concrete was lost. So we used wood. Our houses have a wooden foundation. The wood had to be imported because this country has no forests. So the wood came from what is nowadays known as the Black Forest in Germany or the Czech Republic. So transported to Amsterdam, and then we just ran these wooden logs into the ground. On average, a regular house in Amsterdam has as a foundation 17 wooden logs. They were rammed into the first solid layer under the city, which is 52 feet below us.